Dad was born August 26, 1940 in Dubuque, Iowa, to Burton and Virginia Atkinson, the oldest of their 4 children. Next came Bev, and then Tom, and Barb. The family moved from Iowa to Quebec, or to Calgary, Alberta, in the early 1960s, where he met Audrey Bruce. He was called to military service and returned to the United States for Army basic training, briefly coming back to Alberta to marry Audrey. He finished his training and shipped out for posting in Nuremberg, Germany. Audrey soon followed, and a year later gave birth to twin daughters, Krista and Karen. The family returned to the United States, settling in Dowagiac, where Burton, Virginia, Tom, Barb had moved. Richard settled into family life and work life, adding me, a son, and rising through the ranks of Jessup Dorn to become its president. He had a 4th child, his Norwegian daughter, Ann Stewartson, by way of the foreign exchange student program. After his time at Jessup, he started and ran a number of businesses, including Sanders Lumber Company and Wolf Tree. Richard then retired to enjoy his passions for reading, hunting, managing his 2 properties as a gentleman farmer. He left us March 25th, 2024, after a 2-year struggle with pancreatic cancer. Those are the basic facts of my father's life. What's not included in that quick telling of his story could fill books. The story of how he met my mother, a whirlwind romance for the ages, is just one of these. My father's story lives in our memories and the impact he had on each of us as a loving father, husband, brother, uncle, cousin, grandfather, great-grandfather, friend, hunting companion, colleague, mentor, boss, and teacher. My father's story is also told in what he helped build and left for us, like the room we're in right now. The legacies he worked so hard to establish, the children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren who have his eyes, his ears, and his smile. We all carry his story as part of us, and we invite you to share your stories and memories with us today as the Spirit moves you. We're a little after 4 o'clock right now. At 4:30, a military honors detail will be here to honor my father's service in the Army during the Cold War. To be respectful of their time, we'll pause the storytelling at that point to allow them to do their ceremony and continue once they've completed their work. To get us started, I have 2 quick stories. One new one, one classic. I'm going to start with the new one. In my father's last few days, as he entered home hospice, our job was to make him as comfortable as possible. The hospice nurse, Amanda, gave us some little sponges on sticks and showed us how to keep his mouth and gums hydrated. Water worked fine, but she also recommended using coconut oil or honey because of the taste and the texture. I knew we had honey in the house because we'd gotten it here. He had won it at the Hunter's Rendezvous silent auction in February. So for the few of you who don't know the story here, Dad started the Hunter's Rendezvous, which is an all-day event here at the club with vendors and presentations and raffles to raise money for the Conservation Club's youth programs. He saw the need, staked the first rendezvous with his money, enlisted his friends, and made it happen. Over the past 27 years, the rendezvous has raised over $250,000 to support free hunter safety, outdoor camps for kids, nature shows, teaching materials, scholarships. A few years ago, after leading this for 25 years, my father passed the running of the rendezvous to a younger generation of hunters and their families. I know he took great comfort in seeing the rendezvous was in good hands. So we gave him the honey over those past few days, and you could see that Dad took comfort in the sweetness. I'd like to think he knew that it came from the rendezvous, and that he knew it was Craig Lyons, who's back there, the leader of that young generation who took over the rendezvous, who had harvested the honey, and it was the honey that he was tasting. And I'd like to think that Dad took comfort from that also. So on behalf of my dad, all of us, thanks for the honey, Craig. Okay, let's do the classic. So I can speak for my sisters in saying that our dad always was there to catch us when we stumbled and always had our backs. Most of the time. For Christmas one year, maybe 1979, 1980, Mom had the great idea of giving everyone in the family ping pong ball guns as stocking stuffers. I think she came to regret this as the house became an unrelenting battle zone. Nobody was safe. Alliances with cords were broken. You slept with one eye open, ping pong ball under your pillow. And Dad was in the mix, as deadly with a plastic ball as he was with a shotgun, a rifle, a muzzle loader, a compound bow, a regular bow, anything else that you could probably kill a thief. This went on for days, and we loved it. It was great. Until slowly the ammo ran out. In hindsight, I realized that Mom had been hiding every stray ball she found until all hostilities ceased due to lack of firepower. So, fast forward a year, Mom's cleaning the house, and notice there's something odd about this vase we had in the pass-through window between the kitchen and the dining room. At some point, this vase had been broken and glued back together. When Dad got home, Mom confronted us kids with the broken vase. We each denied all knowledge, which didn't go over well with Mom and Dad. One of their kids was lying to them. After the dust settled, the three of us kids regrouped. Okay, who did it? Again, nobody fessed up, and the mystery of the broken vase lingered in the household for years, like a tiny, unhealing sore that periodically flared up, until a confession. I don't know the reason. An extra snort of bum or blackberry brandy, perhaps, or the naked guilt of his crime going undiscovered. My father finally admitted that it was he, Dead-Eye Dick, who had fired a ping pong ball, accidentally took out the vase, covered up his crimes, and let his innocent fair-haired children take them out. Of course, all was forgiven.
No.
Sorry. So let me pause on this briefly. So this is one of the actual ping pong ball guns. This is Christmas gun. Like when everyone else surrendered, I believe she actually never signed the paperwork. So this is still a working firearm. So just watch it. You especially watch it. So all was forgiven, and this story became part of the collective lore, along with the other countless memories and moments that we share about my dad. These stories are all we have now, and through them, he will continue to inspire us to work passionately for what we believe in, to teach us how to live with purpose, and to show us how to love. Thanks, Dad. I love you, and I miss you. My cousin Jeannie is going to be speaking next. She's reading our Aunt Bev, who lives in Calgary, Alberta, couldn't make it down, but she sent something that she wanted right here today. So pass on the mic.
Hi everyone. So this is written by my Aunt Bev. So here we go. On behalf of our family, I would like to begin by thanking everyone that has sent condolences, phone calls, and texts, and their thoughts and prayers that have been comforting during this difficult time, and has been a reminder of the love and impact our brother Rich has had on so many. Rich had a strong passion for hunting and the outdoors. This is evident by the many young people he mentored through the years and the groups he so willingly supported. This was true in his youth as well. I can remember when we were younger, all of us neighborhood kids would do a weekly playground meetup to show off our pets. Most of the kids brought cuddly kittens and small, sweet companions. Rich, on the other hand, was so proud of his hounds that he would make sure that they made an appearance too. So together we went with our hounds, and boy, were we a hit. I can remember Rich had a hound named Timmy, and although he had many canine companions, I think Timmy might have been one of his favorites. Our first house was on Pinnard Street in Dubuque. There were 6 or 7 other kids on our block, and we spent countless evenings playing tin can. I can proudly say my brother and I were the reigning champions, which is amazing. Us Atkinsons know how to win. Long after the nights of conquering the neighborhood, we headed in for our baths and washed in a wash tub. Rich sat on one side and myself on the other. When we moved to Dubuque and Derby Grange, Richard decided he was going to be a farmer. So he saved up his money and bought a little heifer cow. He loved that cow. One day, the cow fell into the water trough and was about to succumb to its fate when Rich had gotten home from school and rescued him right in the nick of time. He was so mad at Mom and I for not reaching the little cow sooner, and he did not let us forget that for a really long time. Those of us that knew Rich loved him. We will miss that boy and that man that he turned out to be. We will miss the brother that teased me endlessly and told me I was adopted. And he made me cry, but he also wiped my tears. We will miss the father that raised his children with a gentle hand and a loving heart. His children are the reflection of the best of himself and Audrey, and he was so proud of you all. Okay. Roger got me crying earlier, so I'm going to blame it on Roger.
Roger!
I was doing well until that happened.
Roger!
Okay. We will miss the husband that shared 60 beautiful years with Audrey, whom he loved with every fiber of his being. We will miss the uncle and the man that was so passionate about life, hunting, and family. Rich dedicated his life to ensuring the future hunters have the many successes he was fortunate to experience, and the skills and knowledge to ensure the conservation, compassion, integrity into every person he mentored. I would also like to say he mentored and taught my son, Brady, and we were super excited for that. We will miss the man that was our brother. He was a gentle soul, a loving partner, and a devoted family man and friend to many. He was proud, honest, and hardworking, and everything I could want in a brother. I have so many incredible memories. A lifetime wouldn't have been enough time to share with Rich. In closing, I have a sweet sentiment I found on a card, and I received from a friend. I would like to share that with you. Our memories build a special bridge when loved ones have to part, to help us feel we are with them still and soothe a grieving heart. Our memories span the years we've shared, preserving the ties that bind. They build a special bridge of love and bring us peace of mind. Thank you for being my brother Rich. I will miss you. Thank you, guys. Here's my mom.
I'll be reading for Tom. The life of the dead is placed in the memory of the living. Cicero. Tom looked that up, I know. Today we gather to remember my brother Richard Atkinson. Rich was not just a brother, but the cornerstone of our family. We are here to celebrate his life and the many gifts he has passed on to all of us, and to share the pain that his passing brings. By sharing this, we lessen the pain we all feel. Our father suffered a devastating stroke that left him paralyzed and speechless right after his retirement. From that day on, Rich became the head of the family. My parents had two sets of siblings, Rich and Bev, who are 2 years apart, and Barb and me. For Barb and me, Rich was the brother, but he also served as a father and the head of the family. Rich was 12 years older than I, and 17 years older than Barb. God, you're young. For me, he was my brother, a father, and my best friend. Rich adored Audrey, his children, his siblings, his grandchildren, now great-grandchildren, nieces and nephews, friends, and his beloved cat, Lucky. Rich loved that cat, and since Lucky was confined to the garage, Rich would sit in the garage and hold Lucky and spend time with Lucky. Rich loved animals, and he even loved Tom's animals. He let Bailey, Tom's best bird dog, sit on his lap all the way to South Dakota so they could go bird hunting. Rich was a hard worker and had a wonderful career. Bobby talked about that. He worked hard, but he really learned how to enjoy life after retirement. His enjoyment centered around his family and the love of the outdoors and hunting. Tom's fondest memories will always be their hunting trips when they went out west. The time spent in the truck all day and all night were the best part of the trip. Rich would talk all the way to South Dakota, and he loved those times and will always love those times. Rich took special interest in care of our grandson Brady. He taught him how to hunt responsibly, along with Jack, and how to track a deer, and how to shoot a deer, and Butch had to drag the deer out. He was with Brady when Brady shot his first deer. Rich even taught another hunter safety class even though he was ill, so he could teach Brady hunter safety. It was Rich's last class he taught. Rich loved spending time with his friends, Butch, Roger, Mike, Ed, Jack. He spent countless hours with them at the farm in a place called Wahoo, their favorite restaurant. Don't lick the floor. Where they spent time telling stories. Nature was Rich's therapy, but his friends were really a close second in therapy. His friends were his relatives he made for himself. We all know that Rich was highly intelligent. He was an avid reader who loved books about history, especially the Civil War, stories about the West, mysteries about the West and game wardens, books about nature, historical fiction. He even read Gore Vidal. I didn't know Gore was a liberal, apparently. And biographies. He loved to talk about the books he read. But the cabin, that was his castle and his heaven. The family, friends, and Rich gathered there for hunts, mushroom hunting, birthday celebrations, sleepovers, social gatherings, and naps. He would spend his days walking around the property, just being one with nature. One of his last wishes was to visit the cabin. Speaking in first person, I was able to take him for his last visit in March. On his deathbed, he asked Bob and Tom to take him to the farm. It was Tom's last conversation with him. He was too sick to make the trip. There are many wonderful sides to Rich. His life was really a beautiful tapestry. He made our lives richer and fuller. He will live in memories, and he will be remembered every day. Thank you for sharing the memories today about my brother Rich. He would have loved being here. And he would have loved this poem. And of course, it's about hunting. Remember the smiles and not the tears for all hunts throughout the years. Don't dwell on the things left unsaid. Cherish the memories we have instead. Like the crisp mornings and the dusky nights, a trophy buck within our sights, deer camp and friends and family. These moments mean so much to me. So don't cry for me because life is done. Stalking the fields has just begun. Come fall, may smiles adorn your face, knowing I found honey in a better place. With love, we shall leave you in peace. Love always, Tom.
the crier of the family, as you can see, so Sue's gonna help me through this. Because I'm so quiet. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, I borrowed my Rich's little sister. I was actually the whoops of the family because we're 17 years difference here. So, but when I was little, when we were living in Iowa, he was my idol. He was my big brother, and I've been thinking so much about him and everything he did for me, for our family. He loved his family and was always there for us. Some of my earliest memories, and we lived in Iowa, I was maybe 4. And he was working second shift, and I would run in every morning, or every afternoon, I guess it would be, and jump on the bed and wake him up. And he never, at least he never said, he never seemed to care, you know, he was always cuddly and loving and protective. I actually owe him my life. I don't remember this, but he would tell me this story that my mom had given me a bath, and I was, again, in Iowa, probably 4 or 5, probably 4 at the time, and I loved following him around, and I was one that I would go out and I would wander away a lot. So it was during a snowstorm, and apparently my mom had given me a bath, or our mom had given me a bath, and she turned around and I was gone, and I had wandered out. Rich was in the barn. I had wandered out to the barn in a snowstorm, buck naked, I guess. And he heard me whimpering when he was coming back and picked me up, and here I was in a snowdrift, waiting for him apparently. When our dad accepted a job in Calgary and we moved, my dad moved first. Rich had, again, the responsibility of driving our family, all 5 of us, to Calgary. That was a long trip. Especially with Tom in the car, I'm just saying. It was a long trip. But again, he stepped up like he always did. When I was probably about 6, he was drafted, and soon after married Audrey, and I had the honor of being their flower girl in their wedding. When he completed his military service, he and his family moved the family lived in Wajek so he could be near us. By that time, he had twins, Chris and Karen, and he always said that he was going to have twins, so Audrey knew about it in advance, right? Right? There was ideas. It was supposed to be boys. It was supposed to be Anyway, he was a family man. He was so smart and he was so funny. He had a great sense of humor and loved to tease. He and Tom were brutal together, and believe me, I was on the receiving end most of the time. The first time I brought Dave home to meet the family, my grandpa was living with us, or our grandpa was living with us, and it was hard of hearing. So the boy said, "Now you have to really yell for Grandpa to hear." And so Dave came in and kind of shy and was like, "Yell and go, hi, how are you?" And then my grandpa looked at him and said, "What are you yelling about?" And of course, Tom and Rich thought it was hilarious. You know? I figured that would be the last time Dave would be at the house, but he did return, fortunately. So, when our dad had his debilitating stroke, he stepped up and he became the patriarch of the family. He helped our parents during a difficult time. We relied on him and we saw him as a father figure. When Dave and I went shopping for our first home, he was there to guide us, give his opinion, whether we wanted it or not sometimes. But he did give his opinion, but we trusted it and we always followed it. When Dave and I got married, he walked me down the aisle, and he and Dave became best friends, sharing their love for hunting in the outdoors, taking trips out west together. They shared many wonderful times together. Rich and Audrey also gave Dave and I the opportunity, if I can see, to go into partnership with them at 5 Mile Stop and Shop. That was such a great opportunity, and Rich was such a wonderful businessman. He taught us so much about business, how to run a business, and the financial part of it. We can, that went on to help me in my future, and I just can never thank them enough for that. When our boys were little, Uncle Rich and Dave taught them about the outdoors, hunting, nature, and enjoyed sharing his love for the outdoors with the younger generation. One time, Rich would tell me this story that when Marcus was little, he was with Uncle Rich out in the woods, and he got tired, And he said, Uncle Rich, would you carry me? And of course, Rich did. And then he said, I'll carry you when you get old, Uncle Rich. Yeah, so he always loved to share that story. He was a wonderful teacher and uncle. He was a very important part of my kid's life, even attending Grandparents' Day. He was a historian of the family, wonderful storyteller. He loved sharing the stories about our family heritage. Sometimes I think he embellished a bit. I don't know if that's true, but anyway, we loved hearing it, so we're going with it. But anyway, I was fortunate enough to stay with him early this March. And I was able to tell him how grateful I was for him, for his love and his guidance throughout my life. He was an amazing brother. He loved his family and he loved his country. He's leaving a beautiful legacy. He fought a good fight, and now he's in peace. Goodbye, dear brother, until I see you in heaven.
I know there are people that want to come up and say things. Mike, you want to start us off?
Rock roll.
Hey. No, give me the hanky. No, I'm gonna cry.
Mine's up here.
Well, there's a lot of faces I don't know out here. I met Rich 26 years ago when I joined the Conservation Club. He's been a friend. For the past years, knowing Rich, my grandfather's always says, if you're lucky to have 5 best friends, and you can count them on one hand. And I lost a finger with Rich. Rich brought me the final 6 jars of bump to my house a couple months ago. And he was still like a little boy. And Butch just reminded me I would have brought some and everybody taste it. But we will do a salute at deer camp this year with him, for sure. The best way to describe it is, I went to college out in Iowa for 4.5 years at Drake University, and I got to know Iowa people. And one thing you learn about Iowa people, they call them Hawkeyes, is they could see good in people and they could see the bad in people. And everybody around Rich was good people. He didn't have too many bad people around him. And that's why I kind of liked him. He introduced me to a lot of stuff and got me started in hunter safety and all that stuff here at the club. The best way to describe Rich is he loved John Wayne because he was from Iowa. Later in life, with his bad knees, he kind of walked like John Wayne. So that's why John Wayne's up there. And there's stories behind that John Wayne poster, but I won't talk to him about it now. So the best way to describe Rich is, what did Rich love in life? He loved the state of Iowa. He was proud to be a Hawkeye. He loved John Wayne. He loved his Wilbur Hill camp. Many stories there. He loved deer hunting out of there. He loved turkey hunting out of there. And his mushroom hunting. The running of the bulls in Spain is like mushroom season up there on Wilbur Hill. I went there to see that. And you talk about a bunch of people running out there to get mushroom patch first. That was the running of the bulls. He loved to have guys out there on Thursdays at camp. And this bunch is all here. And it was always a challenge who had the best lunch for a while. You know, some of the guys like Ed and Butch and all, everybody that was there, and the girls came, everybody was invited. And it was always a good time. And no, Audrey, we did not talk about the wives all the time. 90% or 80%, or 90% was politics, bashing the liberals. 5% was gossip, then the other 5% was the wives. So just a little bit we talked about the wives, but not very much, but you always accuse us of talking about the wives. He loved deer hunting. There's many stories, and I won't get into all the deer hunting stories because we don't have enough time. He loved turkey hunting, and I loved turkey hunting with Rich. I used to do a lot of calling for him, and it was special. You know, it's more fun to call the birds than it is to kill the birds, to fool Mother Nature. And Rich loved the outdoors. He loved this club. 100%. The time he spent here and the hours he donated, again, the hunter safety, the thousands of kids he donated time to, that was very important to him. And you know what? A couple times I said, I'm done with hunter safety. No, you're not. No, you're not. I need your help. And you always convince me to stay on. Again, the Hunter's Rendezvous and the money he raised for the kids, it was all about the kids. And man, the family with all the kids here. I know why he loves kids. There's a lot of kids. I see the new generation here. He loved the logging industry. He loved being in the woods. He loved the forestry and the cutting of the trees. He, at one time, owned a sawmill, was doing the sawing. Then later in life, he loved the grading of it. And I wish Paul Bontrager would have been here, the Amish guy. And I did contact Paul, and he gives his regards. He couldn't be here. But Paul really respected Rich. He loved his brothers and sisters. He told me many stories about Iowa and this and that. He loved all his grandchildren, his children, and his grandchildren. He talked about you. That's part of being at camp, was to talk about what are they doing. One's graduating from nursing school. One's doing this. One's getting married. You know, it was all about the kids. What's the grandkids going to do? What's happening in their lives? One thing he loved a lot is Audrey. He did love you. And I want to thank you, Audrey, for sharing him with me. Okay? The time he used to come out and do stuff with me, thank you for sharing. Not very many wives allowed me to share. And you're only one of the few that did. I got some buddies up north, they don't like sharing their husbands. And I do appreciate that. The reason he loved you, because you were free-spirited. You're a Canadian, and you drank Molson beer. You definitely captured his heart. And I know he's in heaven now, for sure. And I know he's playing the first round of golf. And I hope he learns the green, so when you eventually, 20 years from now, 30 years from now, pass away, and you go up there to play him in his first round, get your butt. Because you did not show him no mercy on the golf course. Okay? So I hope he's learning the greens. My final, I was going to write a book to tell you a bunch of stories. That's all for later. I want everybody to think of one happy thought. It could be a special moment that you had with Rich. It could be something that was funny. Think of a happy thought, and for 15 seconds, I want you to send a prayer. And this is the new email to Rich in heaven, because I'm going to blow up his email in heaven right now. So everybody bow your heads. Think of a thought, a special time you had with him, and send it to heaven. Thank you. Now I'm going to cry.
And I'm Furman Reed, and I was one of the hunter safety instructors at the club here and that kind of stuff. And I just want to take and pass some of the stuff along with what Richard has done and what he has asked me to do. I was a vice president of the club here at the time, and Richard come at me and he says, I've got a question, and he says, now I'd like to have your answer as to what I should be doing. He says, I want to start a program for the youth education of our club. He says, the situation there is I am willing to put up $2,000 of my own money. And he says, and this here is to take and be starting that program and all that kind of stuff. He says, and I want you to go to the board and I want you to tell them that I will be putting this program together. If we have anyone that has an objection and they want to take and change it, he says it'll be their baby, because I would be all done. So it's my deal now. He said we'll have a hunter rendezvous. He says, and if I take and raise $2,001, I'm going to take and reimburse my own billfold for the $2,000. He says, and that club then will receive $1. Well, we had a treasurer at the time, and I went and told them, you might say, what Richard had done, that he had gotten $2,001 back in the thing, you might say. So I told them, I said, it's the situation. He says, now Richard says, we're going to have $1 coming for the club treasury, and he's going to be taking the $2,000 of his own money that he had put into it. And I said, so it's a situation there. I said, and she piped up and she said, well, she says, for $1, it ain't worth it. I looked at her and I said, that's fine. I said, I'm going to go back and I'm going to tell Richard. I said, it's like this. I said, our club doesn't want to take and have $1. Because they said it's chicken feed. So that I told them, okay, you just put the $2,001 in your pocket and forget about it, I says. Because I mean, they don't want that $1, I says, and it's kind of stupid on their part. I said, now this here is the way that Hunter's Rendezvous actually got started. And with old Richard there, you know, that we did not want to take and cross him. He was the type of person that he had all kinds of ideas on how to raise money. And that's some of the things there, you know, that he was one of the instigators. We had a hunter safety class here. We had 98 students that we had to certify. Well, that back half of the barn, the building here, that there was a fire marshal says we have 125 people. But we had 98 kids in there already. We had 7 or 8 instructors that was working. The parents was in there and the thing and all that. So if the fire marshal had walked in, they would have said, hey, you guys are under whatever you might say. But it was a situation there that I went and told Richard then at that time, I said, well, Richard, I said, it's like this. Our next hunter safety class signed up. We're going to have to take and say 100 kids is going to be the maximum that we can have. And I said, so it's a situation as Richard, I said, it's going to be up to you. When we have 101 kids walk in to sign up, and he is to take and tell them, you know, sorry, you can't take the class. He looked at me and he says, no, I'm not going to do it. You will be doing it. And I said, well, I guess we're going to have to take and have some other way of doing this here program and all that kind of stuff, I says. And so at that time, then we started putting our heads together and all that kind of stuff. We had all these instructors and all that kind of stuff. They decided, well, we're going to take and add on to our building. So the situation there, it's, when I look back at it, I know I would not have been able to go around to all these people and begging for money, you might say, to get this here thing done. I said, so it was a situation there, I says, I can't thank our instructors enough because they put this whole addition, and the club didn't have to take and pay anything because we had the people out there selling our raffle tickets. And I mean, it was like Dempsey there. He won. It was a situation that we had this here boat motor and a four-wheeler. And our raffle we had going to take and raise the money for this here program. Well, we didn't have room for all of our 10 items and all that kind of stuff. So Mike said, well, he says, we'll put that outboard motor on the back end of this four-wheeler. And we didn't have much space over there at the club and all that kind of stuff to sell the raffle tickets. So we sat there, you might say. We had these two young guys come in. I'd say, what, 8 or 9 years old, Mike? So they went and sat there, and I says, this is the newest thing on the market. Well, he kind of had our ears, you might say, too, Dan, and I was there, well, okay, but, and this kid says, you look at his buddy else, he says, if you want to take and go riding, he says, just go out the field, he says, you get on the four-wheeler and go. If you want to go fishing, he says, you get on the four-wheeler with that motor on the back of it, he says, you just drive out into the lake, starts the old motor up, he says, and you go on out across the lake and go fishing. Well, we could not keep from laughing, but we was giggling under ourselves and that kind of stuff, you might say, because that was just one of the things, that I can't take and thank our instructors enough for all they've done. And you can look around here and you can see this. This here is Mr. Richard Atkinson. And I mean, that there is where that he come up and says, $2,000 of my own money. I'm willing to take and put it up and lose it, but we're going to take and have a youth education program. Well, we didn't have to worry about hunter safety classes then being over 100. So it was a situation now, we've got all kinds of room for our hunter safety programs. And so that there is just, thank you, Richard. You're going to be greatly missed. Because Richard was the type of a person that he was able to take and talk to you. And at the end of the day, you might say that that he was wrong when he went and started talking, but he would be able to talk enough. And at the end of the day, he would have you convinced that his way was the only way. I just want to thank Richard and all you other people that come here to send off on this, because I know one thing now. Richard, you're looking down at us, and you know one thing. You've done all that was possibly done, and you did it your way. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. I'm Craig Lyons. I'm president out here at the Conservation Club. I see a lot of familiar faces. There's no doubt Rich was a huge part of the club out here because you've heard so many stories so far. Obviously, I'm a fellow club member, and although I'm not as deeply rooted as Mike and Butch and Ed and Roger and those guys, he was a friend of mine also. When it comes to an organization like this, you have different levels of membership. Your average members, they pay their dues, they use the facilities, they call it a day, and it's great. Beyond that, you have what I think of as your active members. They're working programs, they're running fish fries, they're volunteering for programs, working events. They really are the lifeline of the club. That's how the club survives on a daily basis. Beyond that, you've got what I think of as leaders. Okay? These are people that are implementing new ideas, creating new ideas. They see a problem, they create a solution, right? They spearhead new programs. They're kind of the leaders of the club. Now, I didn't know Rich as a younger man. I can tell you a little bit about the Richard Atkinson that I knew, which is the older generation. He was one of those leaders. Okay, he cared about conservation. He cared about the club. He was a longtime active member of Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, Pheasants Forever, Whitetails Unlimited. Obviously spent a ton of time out here, that's no doubt. He organized youth pheasant hunts between Pheasants Forever, Our Youth Fund, and Kurt Johnson over at Rolling Hills. Tom, I see you out there. He roped you into that a lot. So he'd bring all our hunter safety instructors out there to do pheasant hunts with kids that probably didn't necessarily have a chance to go pheasant hunting. He helped us guide us through a selective log operation out here. He walked us all through it, set us all up with it. We did a harvest, and he ended up helping us put $27,000 into the club's bank account at a time when we really needed it. Certified through Michigan as a DNR hunter safety instructor. He taught classes out here for about 30 years, almost all those classes. He took a lot of pride in taking different generations of his own family and putting them through the course, signing those certificates. I know the last class he did, he was bragging to me about how it was one of his family members. So when the DNR forced, a few years back, they forced all hunter safety programs to go digital, and instructors all across the state of Michigan dropped out completely. Richard didn't want to see the programs dissolve. He agreed to stick it on, hang in there. It was painful. We coached him through all that digital aspect, emails, websites, passwords, all the passwords. He hung on to that because he didn't want to see that hunter safety program that he'd worked so hard for just disappear. Years ago, you've heard about the Hunters Rendezvous. A lot of you have been to it. We needed money to help fund our hunter safety programs because it was growing like wildfires. They were doing such a good job. He came up with an idea. He assembled a team. Most of you are in here in the room tonight or were here earlier. And the Hunters Rendezvous was born, right? 27 years later, the Hunters Rendezvous has raised somewhere around $250,000 that's gone back into the community through various programs like free hunter safety, sending kids to outdoor camps, free nature programs to schools and the local community here, college scholarships, youth outdoor education and enrichment programs, youth pheasant hunts, and there's more to the list than that. I feel like right now, if Rich saw the list that Stephanie and the Youth Fund Committee have going, just prospective ideas, plans to do, things to do with that money, he'd be pretty proud. He's the first recipient of our Lifetime Achievement Award here at the club, just recognizing a lifetime of extra work, achievements out here. And I guess what I'm trying to say is, when it comes to leaving a place better than you found it, I think you did a pretty good job. I feel like I speak on behalf of the club and all the members out here that we're thankful for all the time that him and Audrey committed and spent out here. We really appreciate it, so thank you.
Hello, everyone. For those who don't know me, my name is Paul Harris. I'm Rich's son-in-law. I married one of his daughters, Karen. So everything that everyone has said about Rich is true. He was a very honest, loyal, loving person. But one thing I found out, and many of you guys know too, he was very underestimated in his wit and his sense of humor. It was a legendary practical joker. And I can give you many stories, but I'll start with two. So I decided I was going to ask Karen to marry me, and she said, you better go talk with my dad. So, here I am, a 19-year-old punk kid scared out of my mind. So I go out to Rich and you remember this, you remember when I showed up there? Yeah. So Rich got home from work at a certain time. It's been so long ago, I can't remember the time, but I was going to show up there and have dinner with you guys. Karen wasn't going to show up. And Rich was late for work. So I'm sitting there with you, trying to get my nerves up, scared out of my mind, and you must have knew what was going on. You finally, Paul, what are you really here for? So you could tell. So I showed you. I had the ring. I showed you. And then so finally Rich gets there, and nervous, scared. We're sitting out at the dinner table, and we're eating. And Rich is like, Paul, what are you doing here? And I'm like, well, I just stopped by. I was on my way, trying to work my nerves up, and you started kicking me under the table to get on with this. So I worked up the nerves, and I finally asked, yes, Richard, I would like to ask for Karen's hand in marriage. And I think he saw an opportunity to needle me. So he starts twisting his mustache, looking off in the distance, and then he, so are you going to support her? Are you going to do this? You're going to do, yes, sir, I'm going to love her, I'm going to take care of her, I'm going to support her. Wouldn't you know, a week later, I lose my job. So, and he finds out that I lost my job. He was like, remember what you told me at the kitchen table? I was like, yes, sir. He's like, what are you going to do about it? And I'm like, I'm going to get a job. And so that's when he owned Sanders Lumber, Sanders Sawmill. So he asked me to come work there while I was looking for a job. What was I going to say? No. So anyway, I worked at Sanders Sawmill for maybe 2 weeks. The Sunday before my first day there, I get the flu, sicker than a dog.
Oh, no.
I mean, I'm not a sick person, I hardly get sick, but I'm puking and throwing up. And Karen's like, just call in. I'm like, I am not calling in sick on my first day of the job, I promise. So anyway, I get there. He puts me in the low man position, and I'm stacking boards off of the conveyor belt. And if you guys knew where Sanders Lumber was, it was in downtown South Bend. So here I am working with all these tough inner city guys with teardrops in our eyes. Yes, some real scary guys. And first or second hour, they start talking about this place, how terrible it is to work there, and the bosses are a bunch of a-holes and this and that. And why are you doing here? And I'm like, I just needed a job. So a couple days goes on. I'm working there. Rich checked in on me a couple times, but never let on that I was just going to be his son-in-law. So about the third day, he sent someone when I'm working with all these guys to meet him in his office for lunch. And I knew what he was doing. He was letting those guys know so they would give me a hard time. So I went and had lunch with him. I'm like, wait, I don't want to have lunch with you. These guys are going to know and they're going to give me a hard time. All they do is talk bad about the office people and this and that. And so he loved doing that and needling it to me. So I had to go back in there. What did you have lunch with Rich for? He must really like me. I don't know. Say it like that. So yeah, he liked to run his practical jokes and had like I said, a legendary wit. But I could give a lot more stories. He liked to remind me that he almost killed me one time. Karen and I came home late when she was still living at home, and the door was locked, but we knew where the back key was. So we opened the door and came in the house, and it was dark, and started walking through the kitchen into the house, and I heard the undeniable sound of a shotgun being racked. Yeah. And I knew better to speak, because he would have heard my voice, maybe didn't recognize it, so I just, and Karen was like, hey. So he liked to remind me of that all the time. But Gonna miss him, had a lot of great times with him, did a lot of wood cutting out at Wilbur Hill there with him, and always enjoyed my time with him, so I'll leave it at that. I'm gonna miss him dearly.
Thank you, everyone. My name is Dave Cook. God gives us the gift of life. What we do with that life is the gift we return back to God. Because God calls us to engage in radical service to other people, Dick Atkinson returned a mighty gift to God through the thousands of hours of service he so generously gave to other people. And I was one of those blessed recipients of his generous giving spirit. A conversation about Dick wouldn't be complete without acknowledging his colossal sense of humor and his ability to tell a story. There aren't too many subjects that he couldn't think of something hilarious to say about him. When I first met him back in 1984, I told him that my wife, Julie, and I wanted to start a family right away. And Dick said, you know, twins run in our family. I have twin girls, and there's a secret. And I said, well, of course, I would like to know, what is it? He goes, well, he said, make a nice dinner, candlelight, bottle of wine, get your wife in the mood, then call me and I'll come right over and take care of you. So that was my introduction to Dick Atkinson. But Dick taught me more lessons and provided more pithy wisdom than I have the time to enumerate here today. His advice always provided insight, provided clarity in difficult situations. But one of my favorite stories of him was what he called the foxhole test. He said that if you were under fire from your enemies, who would the 4 or 5 people in your foxhole be there to help you survive the onslaught? For me, Dick Atkinson was one of those 4 or 5 people. Every single time I needed him, he was there for me. He never failed to give me his time and his full attention. Virtue, generosity, and integrity were the bedrocks of his personality. That's why he will always be one of the most influential people in my life. He was a father figure, he was a big brother, he was a best friend, and a business mentor for me. He performed all of these roles effortlessly. It was quite amazing. I would not have made it in business, absolutely would have never made it in business if it wasn't for his help, because he took the time to invest in my success. Our relationship seasoned over time, and I'd spent a lot of time with him along with the fellas. But I used to jokingly tell him that I wanted to be just like him when I grew up. And now I wish I would have told him that I wasn't joking, that I really did want to be like him, because it would be an honor to be anywhere near the caliber of Dick Atkinson. I will miss you forever, my friend, with all of my heart. Thank you.
I feel like we could keep going, right? If anyone else if the Spirit's moving anyone else, please. Okay then. Thank you very much, everybody. This was fantastic. This is exactly what my dad wanted, and you guys all made it happen. And thank you so much. It's a huge loss for everybody, and knowing that he meant so much to so many different people, and hearing all the different stories, and knowing that there's really a lot to the stories, that we're all going to carry those with us. And thank you.
We thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Have a great night.